I can walk on the stage and every single hair on my body is standing straight up, like I'm about ready to get struck by lightning. Like that's how it feels. There's an intelligence that's organizing all of this and being able to get to that place and change information in the field. The experiment is, if I could change the information in the field, could I change the destiny of my life? There are jobs that have not been created yet because of technology, but the people who should be creating them are the young people, really, more than anybody else. From how I was raised as a child, in the family and the culture and the religion that I was raised in, I was mystified that there were actually people that believed in something that I secretly believed in from the time I was young, that actually were masters of their bodies and they were doing miracles, and it wasn't in the traditional how I was raised. And that became a fascination of mine, and I wasn't afraid then to try it out, because my parents used to say to me, if anybody else could do it, you could do it.
You call this the plane of demonstration. What exactly do you think or feel we are here to demonstrate?
Probably the divine within us. That would be the ultimate demonstration, right? To be realized that we are divine. That would be a great demonstration.
Dr. Joe Dispenza, welcome back on Just Tap In, brother. What are you most excited about right now in your life?
Gosh, I'm excited about life. One of the things that we've been busy doing is putting together a documentary. The documentary is, I think, a great balance between some of the stories of transformation that have taken place in this work, where people apply some of the principles that we teach and they see effects in their bodies and in their lives, combined with some of the research that we've been doing to demystify that process of change and transformation that's taking place within them. And then covering just great science about human potential and human possibility, and the discoveries that we've come up, and aware of, hopefully will change the conversation around health and the conversation in medicine. So the documentary has just been a labor of love over the last couple of years, working with my team and a great film producer. And we have a documentary that's, we're going to release to the world.
Yeah, the name of that is Source, which we'll be talking about a lot in this conversation.
Oh, good.
What really is that source? But you spoke upon that documentary, and it follows the journey of 4 different people with radically different health conditions that were able to make wild transformations, to put it lightly.
Unbelievable.
Growing back organs in their body, thyroids, touching that source that we've been talking about. And really to begin setting the stage, right now we're recording this on the summer solstice, which really signifies traditionally a lot of change, a lot of new beginnings. I feel that we're on the precipice of a new beginning on the planet, and I wanted to just open up the space, hearing your thoughts of what you've perceived or felt around what is emerging on the planet right now.
Okay, well, first of all, I think any time is a good time to change. And I don't believe that you have to go to any sacred place in order to do it. But I do think there's a really strong, significant extreme that's being created for people. We're living in a time of polarity, extreme polarity and extremes. And I think we're seeing kind of the emergence of a lot of things that need to come to the surface around people becoming aware of the way the world has been run. And so that's potentially challenging, because so much information is pointing the finger at, wow, there are things could be in trouble. The future could be troublesome. And at the same time, you're seeing great things emerge in terms of wonder and intelligence and health and healing. And so I think we're just living in this time of extremes, and it can really divide cultures and divide people. And I think it's really an important time for us to do just the opposite of that. Instead of living in survival, and to come together and start emerging as one mind and one heart. And I think sometimes systems have to break down in order for something new to emerge, or there has to be so much disorder, so much chaos that sooner or later that has to be reorganized into a greater level of order. So this time of extremes is challenging everybody's, belief, and we're living in this time of uncertainty too. So much seems uncertain to so many of us.
And I'm looking at the younger generations right now, being in my mid-20s now, and I'm looking at the world and we're seeing AI come in, some jobs are falling away. You said that the biggest challenge right now for young people is that the jobs of the future have not been created yet. And that in itself can cause a lot of self-doubt, a lot of unpredictability, instability in a young person's life. I'm wondering...
A lack of motivation.
A lack of motivation as well. I'm wondering if you were to travel back into your 20s, or actually being in that age group right now, how would you navigate all this unknown, which your work is around thriving in the unknown? But even when we're looking out and jobs haven't even been established that will be of the future, what do you do with that?
Well, gosh, this opens up a whole big conversation for us because, the youth, young people, have to sooner or later manage the world, right? Sooner or later, the world will be in their hands. And I don't believe that we can resolve the current problems from the same level of consciousness, that, in fact, on some level, we have to go to a greater level of consciousness. And so living as a young person in these times, there's so much uncertainty that uncertainty and unpredictability, it usually creates stress, and it creates anxiety, and it creates depression, and that's what chronic stress does. It's hard to see a future when you're living in those states because you're more than likely going to believe in something worse that could happen instead of something better. And so there's this resignation that can take place as a result of not seeing a job or a possible livelihood that you can embrace because it hasn't even been created yet. It means that on some level that you have to create it. And I really believe that. I think young minds that really look at the current challenges that are taking place in the world and can figure out what better ways to do things, I think that's exactly what creates the jobs that are going to be the jobs that change the future of some of the current problems that we're facing today. So if I were to be a 25-year-old person, or what would I do if I was a 25-year-old person? Wow, I would be really interested in big topics. And I would be interested in all the things that talk about sustainability, a better way to live, both in the countries that we live in our communities, and I think information and learning in your 20s is so important. Like I think you learn in your 20s and you go out and you try it out. You learn it and you apply it, right? That's what you do in your 20s. And you learn and experience. You learn from your mistakes. You learn and experience. I think that's what your 20s really is about. And in your 30s, you start getting the wisdom. Like, I don't need to do that anymore. I've done that. I've outgrown that. And then you start kind of looking in a different direction. So in your 20s, I think it's so important for people to be fully engaged. I was just talking to my son about this just the other night. I said, it's really cool to be with your friends. It's really cool to hang. But man, if you're not investing in yourself, if you're not making different choices, you're not changing. And that's the challenging part, is moving in the direction of whatever you're passionate about, whatever that is. Whatever you're passionate about that maybe can contribute in some way to make things easier for people or change the world in some way or do something really that fascinates you or whatever it is that you can do, you got to throw yourself in, like fully immerse yourself into it and put a lot of time into whatever you're doing so you emerge as an expert in whatever it is that you do, that you know. whatever you're doing by the time you reach your 30s, well, you've experimented enough, you've learned enough, you've experienced enough. You've made choices instead of doing the typical things with your friends. You took time for yourself to teach yourself, to learn, to practice, to do those things. Those are the things that make you valuable in your life. And then when you feel valued, when you're valuable, and that there's an exchange that takes place for your competence, and you become an expert or successful in whatever area that you find your passion in. And so it's so much easier to scroll through TikTok. It's so much easier to get fascinated by, something on your device. But if reality becomes about images and stimulation, if that's reality for a person, and it's causing them to think, and it's causing them to feel, and it's consuming their attention, on a more probable than not basis, when it comes time for a person to change, it's going to be really hard for them to change, or when they face a challenge or problem in their life, it's going to be difficult for them to manage their attention. So taking time for yourself in your 20s and investing in yourself and being able to set your cell phone down, be able to turn everything off, ask yourself, what do I know? What do I want? How am I going to get there? What is my weak points in my life? You do that in your 20s, you have it all worked out by the time you get to your 30s. How can I respond differently to the same problems, same conditions? If I change, my life changes. Okay, so you want abundance and you want wealth, and that's your goal. That's your dream, that's your vision. You know exactly what that means, the material things that you would have. Your brain automatically creates that. Now just reason this with me. And you're aware that you're not abundant, so you have the lack of abundance. In order for you to become abundant, you're going to have to start thinking differently, learning new information. You're going to have to start making some different choices, and those behaviors better match your intentions. You better get your actions equal to your thoughts, create the experiences, reach your goals, feel the joy, feel the satisfaction, feel the worthiness, so that you do it again and keep evolving, and then you change to become that person who is abundant. So there are jobs that have not been created yet because of technology, but the people who should be creating them are the young people, really, more than anybody else. So immerse yourself in whatever you do. I mean, make time for yourself. I mean, I think that's the most important thing. And then I also think that our youth community, I'm really proud of. I mean, I'm really proud of our youth community. Stay connected on that level. Support each other with your vision, your dreams, your goals. Make a difference in communities. Do something that makes you feel good. Be outstanding in some way. And I think that's so important for young people to do that. I really believe that young people should be doing that because that's really what's going to change the world. That's community by community.
And you just said that community is super important for people to stay connected. But at the same time, whenever you go back to those times in your 20s, you say, I was a weird kid. And when you look at the etymology of weird, it really means someone who is stepping into their divine truth. And when you start getting into big topics and you're young, you are sort of starting to feel like no one else around you is interested in these types of things. You were, at your age and in the 20s, you were learning to master over 900 yoga poses and learning about the masters of the Far East. How did you learn to lead by example in that realm while you were feeling like no one else around me is interested in these things?
Yeah, so, as a young person, I could rally and be a jock, and I could rally and be with the smart kids. I could rally with different people. But really, my two theories in my 20s, my late teens and early 20s was take the value and run. Whatever it is, whatever that value is, you take it and use it and run with it and make it up as you go along. Mm-hmm. Just make it up and just figure it out as you go along. You'll figure it out. Just keep going. And so I've always been an immersive personality. If I did martial arts, I did martial arts every day. Like if I did yoga, I did yoga every day. And if I was going to do it, I was going to do it for the intention of getting really good at it. Otherwise, why would I do it?
All in.
So for me, I kind of did that, whatever it was that I was interested in. What fascinated me more than anything else was that from how I was raised as a child, in the family and the culture and the religion that I was raised in, I was mystified that there were actually people that believed in something that I secretly believed in from the time I was young, that actually were masters of their bodies, and they were doing miracles, and it wasn't in the traditional how I was raised. And that became a fascination of mine. It became a fascination. Well, if they did it, how did they do it? And so my interest in stepping out of whoever I could rally with was just because I wanted to learn more about that. Then that just was all predictable to me. I left, and I started this kind of immersion process, and I wasn't afraid then to try it out, because my parents used to say to me, if anybody else could do it, you could do it. And so I would be like, okay, well, how did they do this? So in that way, when I was in college, I kind of broke from the parties after a period of time. I just didn't, I was very different in that way. I was there to learn. And I wasn't like an introvert, or I wasn't unapproachable. I would go to class and be with everybody, but I made other choices, and that turned into this kind of exploration that led to some profound experiences. And then once you have the experience, it's hard to talk you out of not doing it again. And so when I immersed myself, for example, in something like yoga, I did a lot of yoga, and I did it 3 hours a day, and I never missed a day, and I was up early in the morning. But I was learning anatomy and physiology at the time, and I think I learned more about the body through the experience of doing yoga and understanding it kind of on this intuitive level, as much as I learned about the textbook. So the two different things, learning all this information about anatomy and physiology, and at the same time, conditioning my body in a certain way with the intention of really seeing if I could actually master something about myself. I mean, both of those worlds were kind of merging for me. And so then when you do that and you kind of leave the pack, and you step out, I think if you're really, I realized after a certain point how much I changed. I realized in my early 20s, how much I changed. And I think, the investigation of hypnosis and everything else was just kind of the side effect of, I saw people doing hypnosis, in seeing them doing some pretty amazing things. Was it similar to what those masters were doing? What is the subconscious mind? And then it kind of led me in another direction. So all the time I was changing. That when I kind of emerged and was ready to go out into the world, I felt like I put in my time, and I knew exactly what I wanted and what I was doing.
You knew yourself, in other words.
Yeah, I mean, and then I thought I was done, and then, I was run over by a truck, and then I thought I was done then, and it's just been kind of these ongoing, experiences that kind of lead me in different directions, yeah.
Hey everyone, Emilio here, and I hope you're enjoying this episode as much as I am. As you can tell by now, taking care of our energy is one of the most important things. But even Dr. Joe acknowledges how important it is to take care of our physical body as well. By now, everyone knows that sleep is one of the most important processes of our health because it's when our cells get the chance to heal and repair. But what most people don't know is the hidden factor in our lives that can totally disrupt our sleep. At the wrong time of the day, this factor acts like a toxin in our body's ability to naturally produce melatonin, which is the most important antioxidant, anti-cancer, and anti-aging molecule according to science, and something that Dr. Joe talks a lot about in his work as it relates to the pineal gland and altered states of consciousness. This factor is blue light. Blue light is a natural part of the sun spectrum, and during the day, it acts as a stimulant to our brain to produce the key hormones, neurotransmitters, and peptides for normal waking day activity and health. But at night, blue light from our screens or modern light sources actually tricks our brain into thinking that it's still daytime, which disrupts our production of melatonin and the body's natural healing process. This can lead to trouble falling asleep, reduced sleep quality, and an increased risk of disease, which is all correlated and linked to poor sleep. But thankfully, there is a modern solution, and it's not just hiding out in a cave or going back to candlelight. It's called Ra Optics Sunset Lenses. Sunset lenses like these block the wavelengths of light that disrupts your body's natural circadian rhythm and melatonin production, allowing you to wind down naturally in the evening, sleep more deeply, fall asleep easier, and also wake up feeling properly rested, energized, and refreshed. So what we're really saying is that this tool improves our overall health. And what's really interesting is that Ra Optics has even partnered with Oura, which is the maker of this popular sleep tracker, and has witnessed consistently these measurements of the wearers improving their sleep scores. Ra Optics lenses have been developed by leading experts in the field and utilize advanced pigment technology to filter the harmful frequencies of blue light. Their frames are made of premium materials like Italian acetate and German steel, and are also available in a wide variety of frames and styles. But in my opinion, here's where it gets really good, because just as I've partnered with Ra Optics, they have also partnered with Inner Science Research Fund and created these frames called the Dispensas, which I'm wearing right now, and they donate $50 for every sale on this frame to advancing the research on meditation led by Dr. Joe's work. I'd like to say thanks to Matt and his team at Ra Optics for really, truly making this episode possible. If you want to transform your sleep quality, health, and life, try a pair of sunset lenses at rawoptics.com/tap-in Dispenza. That's rawoptics.com tap-in Dispenza. I am making a commitment to all of you right now that I only work with companies that I personally use and truly believe in. And I can guarantee that this is one of the best investments that you can make for your health. They are so confident in their product that if they don't change your life, you can send them back for a full refund within 30 days of receipt. Of course, your purchase supports this podcast, but also we are donating 5% of all total sales from this episode to Inner Science Research Fund to study the life-changing effects of meditation and making meditation the standard of care in medicine for the future. Once more, head over to rawoptics.com/tap-in Dispenza and use the discount code tap-in Dispenza at checkout. From my heart to yours, I love you all so much, and enjoy the rest of this episode.
I think one of the most powerful aspects of the work is the testimonials that come about. And I've been going through a lot of testimonials recently. And when I first started getting into the work, I think it's what really inspires you what is possible. It's like reading about those masters. Like you see people walking on water, bilocating their bodies. You're like, how can I do that? If someone can do it, it's like the 5-minute mile, 4-minute mile, whatever it is. And I wanted to bring to the surface the testimonial of, it's one of the most watched on your YouTube channel, Zachary. He was a 21-year-old kid who had gone through severe emotional trauma. He was part of one of the mass school shootings in the country, concussions from playing football. What about that story do you think resonated with so many people, and how he was able to overcome at such a young age what he was doing?
First of all, any testimonial that gets on the stage and talks, they are speaking the truth.
Yeah.
And I think people tend to lean in when you are witnessing someone telling the truth about what's possible for a human being. I think the tribe wants to know. And so when people suffer from mental health conditions, right? We have a lot of changes in physical health conditions, but when people suffer from mental health conditions because there's trauma involved, and you see them transform and change, it's really hard to make an excuse that your past was so bad that you can't. And I think his innocence, in his curiosity, and his willingness to see that nothing really was working for him in his life, and how honest and transparent and truthful he was about, and being vulnerable about where he was at and what his choices were, and his resistance, and then his breakthrough. I think everybody secretly believes in themselves. I think they secretly do. And whether you're a CEO of a company or a prison inmate or a single mother with 3 kids, anybody who I've talked to, on some level, they secretly believe in themselves. And you got to earn the right to believe in yourself. You got to come up against all the disbelief in yourself, and it's a practice, right? And you grow into beliefs. That's how it works. So when a person sees the evidence that a person can change with a really difficult past, how severe the trauma is, that they're reaching that person is seeing, I can change too. That's what they're seeing. They're seeing, I can change. That person is giving me permission, and whatever they're saying makes total sense to me. And it's so great when it doesn't come from me. It's really great when someone else is saying it, because everybody's kind of making the connections. So his example for the youth community created such a level of compassion, and it literally strengthened the youth community, because one of their tribe is now the truth, right? And they can resonate with that. And
I cried when I listened to that testimony.
Of course, because it was speaking to you. And I think really that's the tribe feels an empathy. The mirror neurons in the brain, they're empathizing with that person's feeling of joy, that feeling of renewal, that feeling of being more unlimited, that humbled kind of great feeling. They're empathetically feeling what that person is feeling, instead of fear, instead of just jealousy or envy or competition amongst the tribe. The empathy kind of draws, it switches on the networks in the brain that causes us to be social or more connected. We bond, we move together, right? We're celebrating someone. There's a light, right? That we can shine that light now, exactly the way that, and we believe in ourselves now. We believe in possibility a little bit more. And so the youth community who, one of the people in the documentary with cystic fibrosis. I mean, that's not an easy. That's a juvenile onset, typically health condition. Very difficult to change, if it ever changed. She's a light to the entire community, but she's a light to the youth community. That's one of the tribe in that community. And I think if you get enough people witnessing that and believing in themselves and stepping out and doing it, when you see organisms in nature, any organism, birds, doesn't matter, fish, humans, when you behave similarly, when you behave and act in the same way, an emergent consciousness takes place. And that emergent consciousness is really an awareness of possibilities that you would never be aware of from a different level of consciousness. And so the testimonials are tantamount as a good story that is the example of truth, in that 4-minute mile that is a breaking through of a certain level of consciousness or unconsciousness, and invariably somebody in the audience is looking at that person. They don't look vegan, and they don't look gluten-free, and they don't look young and particularly fit or well-dressed. But on some level, they're speaking to them, and they're saying, I have the same health condition. I think the same way. I have that condition. If she can do it, I can do it. And I was just did a keynote presentation at a conference in Dallas, a biohacking conference. And I met this young guy, and I met his father, and he's 15 years old. And he was a little uncomfortable, but he was hanging out backstage. And then, I don't know, I did my lecture, I came backstage, and he was in tears. He was in tears. And he said, because I was talking about the voices and the chatter in our head that talks us out of the unknown. And he was so emotional, and he said, I thought for the longest time I was the only one that thought that way. And, that I thought there was something wrong with me. And then when I started talking about the transformations and changes, he thought, that makes total sense. Then if this isn't real, then I want to become this, And so he was inspired by information. And he wasn't relying on his cell phone, to regulate his emotional state. He wasn't letting something else outside of him control his feelings and thoughts. He, for the first time, thought, I'm going to change. I'm going to change my state. I think there's so much power when people trust and believe in the unknown, right? And they have, in order for you to believe in possibility, you got to believe in yourself, right? And if you're going to believe in yourself, you better be believing in possibility. And I think that's what information does. So witnessing transformation is more information. Yeah.
And on the topic of Zach's testimonial, there was a moment where you stopped him and you said, he loved himself even more because he did settle the body down and overcame himself. So immediately I put in self-love equals overcoming yourself. And the more I've contemplated that, I'm realizing we get to love ourselves even more when we don't necessarily identify with this body, this identity, this name, all these things that surround us that we've sort of put into our identity because we're loving maybe the soul. What are your thoughts on self-love and what it has to do with overcoming?
Yeah. First of all, that's a great question. Thanks for the question. When I say he loved himself enough to settle the body down, people will say, I want all kinds of things with their intention. They'll have a vision of what they want. But when it comes time to say, I want to heal or I want to change something about myself, it's another thing when you come up against yourself, because immediately when you decide to do something differently and make a different choice, that is the unknown, that is the unpredictable. There's uncertainty. You're leaving familiar territory and you're not choosing in the same way. And when you choose differently, you change. And if you don't choose differently, you don't change, right? So the hard part about change is making the choice. So you step out into the unknown, and the body really is conditioned through its habituations and programs and its emotional states to be the mind. It's really running the show. So the cry out, the call from the body is, you better get back to suffering. You better get back to your depression. And this unknown stuff is creating too much uncertainty, too much fear. And so that kind of quick default that happens automatically for a lot of people causes the body to want to influence the mind. And sometimes the body gets agitated and it gets frustrated and it gets impatient.
You'll itch in places you've never itched before.
Yeah, the body is just going to do anything it can to get you to go back to you, right? So it turns out most people think they can't meditate in that moment, or they get up and get on their phone, or they say, I'll do it later, or whatever. I'm too busy. But take a person and give them something to do, and that agitation comes up. When they start getting impatient, when they start feeling depressed, when they start feeling like they want to kill themselves. And keep lowering the volume to that emotion. Keep settling the body down. You're training the animal. You're conditioning it to the new mind. You're telling it it's no longer the mind, that you're the mind. It just takes an enormous amount of energy and constant level of awareness to keep working with the body to get it to relax into the present moment, because the present moment is the unknown. And that's a dangerous place when you're living in survival. So you got to go against all that programming. And so he was sitting in the fire. And he was sitting in the fire, and it became something that he realized that he could do. And he started practicing settling the body down, settling it down. Sooner or later, you're training the animal. It's going to start obeying. It's going to surrender to a new mind. It's going to acquiesce. And all of a sudden, all the tension that's in the body, all the energy in the form of emotion from the past that's stored in the body is freed as information. The body's liberating. The information is liberating energy. And you're freeing the body from the chains of the past, the familiar past or the predictable future. And the body can kind of relax into the present moment. And when you're inhibiting the thought that's making certain chemicals for you to feel a certain way, you keep doing that, sooner or later, that energy naturally is no longer in these lower hormonal centers, and it kind of blows right up into the heart. We've seen it over and over again. And the person all of a sudden, in the absence of their own thoughts that are making them feel so miserable, in the absence of their own unconscious behaviors of complaining and blaming and making excuses why it's so hard to change, and and in the absence of the emotion that they typically feel on a regular basis, the absence of that actually creates a new consciousness. The energy moves right into the heart, and the heart sends energy directly to the brain. In an instant, it informs the brain that trauma's over. It resets the baseline emotionally for the trauma. In other words, the heart's telling the brain it's safe to be creative again. It's time to dream again. It's the creative center. Laboring for that moment, you look back at your past, laboring for that moment is so worth it, because when a person who actually frees themselves from the chains of the past, when they look back at their past from a greater level of consciousness, from the consciousness of love, they no longer hold their betrayers, the murderers, the abusers, they no longer hold them hostage with their own attention and their own emotion. They look back and they see the past as, from a greater level of consciousness, they have nothing but love for them, because they're in such a state of love, they see that they had to go through that whole entire journey to get to this moment. And that's the moment you go, wow, I wouldn't want to change a thing in my past. That's the moment the past no longer exists, right? So he had his own profound moment where he came right up against the end of his emotional belief. Instead of giving up on himself, he went again. And the body wasn't ready for that. Oh. And it surrendered. And so the side effect of that is a lot of love. So much love for yourself, not in an entitled or arrogant, self-centered way, but the triumph of overcoming the body as the mind, settling the animal down, and it moves into the heart, and we start to feel divine. It's not like you have to try to forgive any longer. It's not like a thing, like, I'm going to forgive you, don't forget, I'm forgiving you. It's not like that. It's that you feel so good, you're good. You're good, like you're good with it. Don't worry, I'm good with that. I don't care what you did, I'm good. It's not like it's something you have to practice, it's the side effect. And so he would never have become the person that he became without the experiences that he had in his past that brought him to that moment of truth. And wow, how many people's lives can we change when we do that? So the body is living in stress and living in survival. Yeah, you're going to have your attention on your body. You're going to have attention on the people in your life, on the places you need to go, the objects and things in your life. That's what they do. Survival heightens the senses, right? So we discovered, as you said, that when you teach a person how to overcome their body, settle the body down from its habituations that it needs to get up and go, or it's in emotional states, and labor for that present moment, to go from some time to no time. When you catch yourself thinking about the place you need to go or the things you need to do, catching yourself defaulting and doing that and bringing your attention back to the present moment, the act of catching yourself from going unconscious causes you to get better at being conscious. It's exactly what the process is. That is the overcoming process. So the overcoming process of the old self and the becoming process of the new self, the absence of the habituation that makes the person unhappy, the absence of feeling the emotion from the thought that's causing them to feel unhappy or torturing or tormenting the body chemically, is called joy. The absence of the addiction, the body is renewed. It's so objective. It's believing it's living in the environment where the stressor is occurring. So the body's free and energy moves right into the heart, and that's the moment the person feels a tremendous amount of love for everything. And they make choices for themselves that are loving to them. That's just in alignment. And they wouldn't hold a grudge because they would lose the feeling. And the feeling feels way too good. So memorize that feeling, and now you have wisdom, right? That's the memory without the emotional charge.
This morning I was doing the Tuning into New Potentials meditation. and really getting into that space where then I heard your voice saying, become more of it and less of you. And the moment you said that in the meditation, I just had like this like black screen and entered that void space, entered the quantum.
It's a real thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm like,
a real thing.
What is that? What is, when you're referring to become more of it, what is that?
Well, we perceive a very, very small percentage of reality. The probability that we're seeing the truth of reality is actually zero. We're looking at, if you look at the whole electromagnetic spectrum, all the frequencies from the slowest to the very fastest, that whole spectrum, if you look at it, you'll see there's a small band of frequencies that are the rainbow: red, orange, yellow, blue, green, indigo, violet. That small spectrum of frequency that the sun is creating is bouncing off the most stable form of energy called matter, and it's causing us to be aware that we're local as a consciousness separate from everything around us. Every person I'm separate from, every object, every place, everything, causes us to all of a sudden be immersed in this hologram, and all of our attention then tends to be on the material world, and our senses plug us into this three-dimensional reality. And everything is made of atoms, and atoms are 99.99999% information and nothing that you could perceive with your senses. We're looking at 0.0000001% of reality, and that's that frozen state of energy called matter, right? And so our brains are not wired to perceive the other 99.99% of reality. So if everything is made of atoms, and atoms mostly nothing in energy and information and frequency, then I'm perceiving a very small percentage of you. And so are you perceiving a small percentage of you. So if you were to blow up nucleus of an atom to the size of a Volkswagen bus, where that electron, the field where that electron could exist, would be the size of Utah. So there's a lot of space in atoms, right? But it's not empty. There's energy and frequency in there. So if everything is made up of atoms, and it's mostly energy and information, and we're narrowing our focus on the material world, if you ask people to open their awareness and open their attention to nothing, to stop thinking about the people in life, get beyond their body, not think about the place they are, the objects they own, the object they possess, where they need to be in the next moment, to predict the future, to remember the past, to kind of slip into that place where they are just pure consciousness, aware of nothing but them. The act of sensing space and opening your awareness is putting your attention on all that energy and frequency. If you teach people then to pay more attention to the wave function of energy in quantum physics and less of the particle, put more attention on energy and less on matter, if you keep doing that and become more of it and less of you, to pay more attention to it, less attention to you, where you place your attention is where you place your energy. Teach people to stay present with it, stay aware of it, feel it, experience it, relax into it, become more of it and less of them, lose their sense of self, their sense of separation to nothing. Somehow the act of doing that over and over again causes the autonomic nervous system, the tuning fork, if you will, of the body to begin to start to resonate and oscillate to that different frequencies in that field. It creates more coherence, more order in the autonomic nervous system, starts regulating to greater and greater levels of order. And so when we talk about that quantum field, it's an invisible field of energy that exists beyond our senses. Now, what does that mean? You cannot see it. It's beyond our ability to see it. You can't hear it, you can't smell it, you can't taste it, you can't feel it. You do all that in three-dimensional reality. So the only way you can experience it is become conscious of it. And somehow, when you have a thought of it or you become conscious of it, it changes its frequency and energy. So get people to pay more attention to that nothing, that quantum field, take away everything physical, take away everything material, and you're left with nothing, right? And so that nothing we've discovered is rich in a lot of something when people begin to pay more attention to it and less attention to them. Somehow there's dramatic shifts in their nervous system, in their biology, and their cells and their immune system and their gene expression. Somehow this field is entraining their nervous systems to greater level of order, and the more coherent the nervous system, the more coherent the information all the cells and tissues are getting. So having the moment where you feel like, my God, I just went into this blackness, like what the hell, that's it. That's it, yeah.
And it's almost like we're activating new senses as well when we're perceiving beyond just the five senses, when we're in those states of meditation. And I'm just like making connections in my mind right now, because if we are primarily energy and wave, and we drop into this particle matter state, then that energy is truly the essence of where everything arises. And it must have had a reason to create matter. What was that? Do you have any insight as to why?
I mean, my best shot at that is that if you dial all the way back to the moment of creation from a quantum physics standpoint, you come to this source of very high frequency energy or low entropy. There's so much energy, there's so much order, there's so much intelligence that it's creating everything physical and material. That source is really the consciousness of everybody, of everyone, of everything, of everywhere, of every time. It is the all in all, right? It's oneness. So to experience something other than oneness, you got to become something other than oneness, and we have to separate from source. And the question is, what if there's many instead of what if there's one? And what is there besides everything that we know? Let's go out and explore. What is it, right? So I think the slowing down of frequency all the way down into density gives us the autonomy to take a piece of oneness with us. And we're no longer connected to anybody, to anyone, to anything, to anywhere, anytime. We have our own free will to create reality, to answer the question, is there anything else but oneness? And so every individual soul then, on its journey, taking on different physical form and three-dimensional reality, is to smell a baby's head, is to drink a really great cup of coffee. It is to feel love and to feel joy and to taste and experience life, right? And then when the experience is over, create something else, right? But if we get so immersed into the illusion of separation that we forget where we came from, the creative process in three-dimensional reality means we have to do something in order to get it, right? So in creating in 3D reality, everything takes time and energy because we got to move our body through space and do things to get things done, to have experiences. So everything physical and material is vibrating at its very lowest frequency that we perceive with our senses, but it's coming from, every atom is coming from source, right? And so the matrix of how the atoms come together and share information forms different patterns form different molecules and different elements, and they all come together and they create this kind of reality. But there's an intelligence that's organizing all of this into information. So then that invisible field of energy that exists beyond our senses just happens to be nothing physical and material. And being able to get to that place and change information in the field, the experiment is, if I could change the information in the field, could I change the destiny of my life? Could I change the hologram in three-dimensional reality? Can I change the output? If it's coming from source, then if I get close enough to source and I create from the field instead of from matter, maybe I can shorten the distance between the thought of what I want and the experience of having it if I create from the field instead of from matter to matter.
I want to say thanks one more time to our sponsor, Raw Optics, for really making this interview possible. If you're interested in transforming your sleep, health, and life, definitely go check out the sunset lenses at rawoptics.com/tap-in-dispenza. This link will automatically apply a 10% discount on all your purchases. That's rawoptics.com/tap-in-dispenza. Also, their daylight yellow lenses are amazing at eliminating eye strain, fatigue, headaches, and improving your overall focus and productivity if you're at an office or spend a lot of time looking at screens. These are a lifesaver. For me, this is the most important part and why I believe that this partnership was so aligned with this episode in specific. We will be donating $50 to every Dispenza frame, the one that I'm wearing right now, to the Inner Science Research Fund to study the effects of meditation and really create the future of medicine. Also, as I mentioned, 5% of all sales from this episode in specific using our link will go directly to the research. Trust me, this is a product that can absolutely change your life. And not only are you supporting the podcast, you're supporting people that are working on this product diligently that I know personally, and you're also supporting the future of medicine. You're supporting Dr. Joe's work, and really you're making a change in the future of meditation and what it really means to be a human being. So finally, visit rawoptics.com/tapindispenza. And I love you all so much. Thank you for sticking around this far into the episode. Let me know down in the comments what you're loving about the insights and the wisdom given. And I will see you all on the next one.
And I'm coming to the realization that it's not like we are trapped in this physical reality. You mentioned that we're not linear beings, we're multidimensional. And when we access those higher realms, then we can change aspects in the physical reality.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's the experiment.
Yeah.
That is the experiment. It just takes a lot of unlearning and a lot of relearning. You know, if you're living in survival and you're living in stress, you got to keep your eye on the ball. And if you're addicted to stress, then it's going to be very difficult for you to go within because there's a predator out there, there's danger out there. So when we work with prisons, there are prisoners that cannot, in the beginning, close their eyes. It's not their conscious mind. They want to do it. Their body's like, you are not closing your eyes. You're not taking your eye off the ball. It's just there's too much trauma from the past, right? So then teaching people, training people how to lay down their identity and to get beyond their body, to get beyond all the elements in their environment, get beyond time. And in survival, all your attention is on your body, your environment, and time. But to change is to be greater than your body, to be greater than your environment, to be greater than time. That means when you're living in stress and you're living in survival, it's really hard to change, right? It's really hard to change. So the process of teaching people how to do it, I worked for years. We looked at enough brain scans and HRV measurements and all kinds of things. We worked for years to be able to demystify that process and teaching people how to take all of their attention off of everything physical and material, to disinvest all their attention and energy out of this three-dimensional reality, out of everything that's known, get beyond their senses and put their attention on energy and frequency. You can't walk through the eye of the needle with your body or your problems or your past. You got to go as a nobody, a no one, a nothing, a nowhere, and no time. That moment of pure consciousness is the moment that it's being reflected. There's a change in a person's brain. There's a dramatic change. The compartments that have been divided, they start to unify. The whole, everything starts to synchronize. Everything starts working in more holism. Get a person in that state, somehow the information on that frequency that they're interacting with is changing their biology, it's changing their chemistry. And they're not doing it by changing their diet, they're not doing it by taking a vitamin, they're not doing it by taking a pharmaceutical. This is what we discovered in our research. It's their interaction with that invisible field of energy that exists beyond our senses. Pay more attention to it and less attention to you. Experience it, feel it, relax into it. Somehow, changes a person's biology. At the end of 7 days, it looks like they're literally living in a whole new life.
When I was in the week-long in Cancun in 2022, we had done our previous interview and I hadn't been to any of the retreats yet. And then you're like, you gotta come. I'm like, I'm on the next one. And I just see you get into this state when you're guiding the meditations. And I realized it's not the same meditating on my own in my bedroom than with a group of people. We're a communal species. So I'm really curious to know, like, what are you feeling? What are you seeing when you're guiding these mass meditations? Because the field, you could feel it. It's so palpable.
Yeah, for me, I'm super sensitive
Yeah.
person, and I'm sensitive to a lot of things. I love witnessing the whole process. If we're doing a coherence healing, and we do a lot of those at our events where we heal other people, and when I get the collective synchronized, and I got coherent hearts and coherent brains, and people are single-minded, and they have one intention, and that is to give life to another person's life, and that's all lines up. And the group's on time and everything comes together. I can walk on the stage and every single hair on my body is standing straight up, like I'm about ready to get struck by lightning. Like that's how it feels.
The attention a lot is on you too.
That's not
energy.
but that's not the energy of the room. The energy of the room is just so, like it's just lightning is about to strike. You can feel it in the air, like there's static energy, right? And well, I know when I walk out, and before I even say a word, everybody's just in that state. The tribe is ready to go to work, right? We're going to resurrect. We're going to renew others in the tribe, right? So when everybody's coherent like that, I walk out. I have very somatic, very strong somatic sensations. Like there's, I know lightning's going to strike. I know there's going to be people that are going to be healed. I just know it, and of course it correlates a lot of times exactly with the random event generators, where we see they just go off the scale. Things are getting way more orderly and less random, right? So other times, towards the end of the event, I get pretty lucid because I'm past, I'm tired and happy. Really, basically.
That's the formula of the mystical.
Yeah, for me it is anyway. And I get kind of loose. And then I think my perception alters, and I've seen some pretty cool and amazing things. But the general feeling is that I'm immersed in greater and greater levels of love, greater and greater levels of order. And somehow when I get to that point where I feel connected to that consciousness, it's my job to ask if there's more love. Is there more possibility? Is there more awakening? Is there more miracles? Is there more mystical? Is there more unknown that we could become aware of? So every person in the community that's speculating possibility, doing it together, is actually changing the consciousness of the collective energetically, right? So everybody's feeding off each other, and collectively there's an emergent consciousness that's taking place, right? And so that, I think everybody's doing that. The individual represents the whole, and we're wholeness in parts. We're part of the whole. So get a collective group of people with brain and heart coherence. It's not the number of people. It's not the amount of energy. It's the most coherent signal. Get them resonating in the same level, and you fall into it. And now when you feel like you're part of it, it's your responsibility to keep your energy up. And when we just see that people change people, that's what our research shows. You're no longer seeing class, you're no longer seeing age, you're no longer seeing race, you're no longer seeing anything. You're seeing the divine in the human being, like, wow, there you are. Because I feel so divine, I can see it in you. So when that energy is in the room, then I see all kinds of things happen to people, both physically and non-physically. I mean, people have some really huge moments. And the rest of the audience is busy on their own journey. But it's happening, quite a bit in the room.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I heard once that it's not the answer that opens the mind, but the question. And you're asking, is there more love? Is there more possibility? Is there more mystical?
There has to be.
Yeah.
I mean, is this it? Like, I'm not satisfied. This can't be it.
Yeah.
This can't be. So getting people, though, beyond themselves, the first few days of the week-long event, they're going to come up against their agitation. They're going to come up against their judgments. They're going to come up against their bias. They're going to come up against their impatience. They're going to come up against their pain. They're going to come up against their memories. They're going to come up against their identity, their importance, their entitlement, their doubt, their fear, their unworthiness, their need to analyze and predict. They're going to come up against all. It's so good because you can't get through the door with any of those things. So how long Do you want to sit with yourself until you finally catch yourself from going unconscious? How many times do you have to forget? Do you stop forgetting and start remembering? Take a person to that point where they think they're done. You know, when they think they're done, we discovered if we push them a little bit further past that point, that's when their biology, that's when their brain, that's when they change the most. Keep doing that, keep stretching them into the unknown. They get kind of comfortable in the unknown. Now, biologically, they're ready for adventure, or they're ready for the unknown.
The first days for me were tough because I couldn't overcome the ego mind identity. And I'll tell you what the turning point for me was. It was when the meditations were not about me, and I sort of shifted my consciousness, and we started doing the coherence healings, and it became about the healing of another person. And that it ushered in a new insight for me of this life is about service.
That's what we really want to be doing.
Yeah.
That's what everybody really wants to be doing. Everybody really wants to do that. So the first half of the week, you know, we press people with a lot of information, a lot of experience. And I know for those people who are still having difficulty in the breakthrough, I know that the moment we get to the walking meditations and the moment we change it up and we get to the coherence healings, they go, oh my God, this was never about me. And we were just looking at the data from Harvard. You know, we work with some Harvard cardiologists. Looking at the one graph the other day, it was just so mind-blowing because there's always a continuous growth of heart coherence over the course of a week-long event. The elegance is trending in the right direction for heart coherence, except for during the coherence healings. So we see the hearts go up into coherence, and you see this spike that goes straight down. And that spike going straight down is an arousal. That's when the whole entire audience, there's energy, enormous amounts of energy move into their brain. They're in a sympathetic aroused state. And the sympathetic nervous system is driving energy to the brain. So the person is in that aroused state, and they go way out of heart coherence, because when your sympathetic system's switched on, it's moving energy, but it's not fear, it's not anger, it's not pain. It's an intentional act of moving energy for the ecstasy of healing another person. So what happens after that spike is people are wearing their HRV monitors. You see this dramatic, constant increase in heart coherence that goes on days after the event. So here's where they started. The arousal produces such a level of love that it becomes an experience that lingers emotionally in the person. But why would they want to stop healing? Why would they want to stop? If it made them feel that good, they should want to do it again. So for a lot of people, the mystery is uncovered when they realize, oh my God, this has never been about me. It's always been about somebody else. If I'm going to love another person into life, I better be in love with life. Wow. Well, that's not for you. It's for someone else. Wow. I don't know why it's easier to clean someone else's backyard than our own, but we're wired that way.
Is there a specific gene, do you think, that helps us connect like that?
No. I think you could signal the right gene intentionally, but I don't think there is a specific, well, I think there's a potential gene that can be activated, but I don't think there's a specific gene that makes it easier for one person than the next.
Yeah, it's the divine. That's what it wants.
I think when the divine is awakened in us, it starts in our heart. It's not the end, but people who really connect to it feel a level of love they've never felt before. And the arousal that's taking place is very high amounts of energy. So there are no words to describe that level of love. And when the person realizes, oh my God, it's not coming from my sports car or the game, it's not coming from my shopping spree, or it's not coming from anything outside of me, not any drug. They start looking for love inside of them, man. That's when the love affair begins, right? And so that's what happens over the course of 7 days. And so then when that consciousness is activated and the signaling mechanisms are switched on, and there's an engorgement of blood into your heart, just like your sexual organs, but instead it's in your heart. And when that thing opens up all the way, that's hard to put into words, the amount of love that you feel. I mean, the divine becomes awakened in the person, and all they want to do is give. All they want to do is serve. All they want to do is be a part of the whole, right? To contribute to the whole. That's who we are. when we're not living in stress and in survival. So we've discovered when we get people to really practice this, to keep relaxing into their heart and moving out of survival, relax, relax, relax into your heart. The more relaxed they get into their heart, the more awake or more energy moves to their brain. Now, you're not stressed out, unconscious, and living in a program. Relaxed and awake is pretty much kind of lingering in the unknown and being totally okay with it in the present moment.
And that's when the synchronicities begin.
That is when the doors open. Let's just say you are living in a state where the doors open. You have a field of energy that can synchronize to the synchronicities you want in your life. You got a Wi-Fi signal.
There's another important aspect regarding this arousal that you talk about, because it's happened to me a couple of times where it's so much energy in the heart that you sort of don't know what to do with it. Yeah. And you said before that every mystical experience you've had, you always come back and say, Joe Dispenza, you got this all wrong, where some veil is removed to be able to see things for what they really are. And you've also said that these mystical experiences have to be integrated in the nervous system in some sort of way. If not, they could lead to some sort of psychosis, or people begin to start freaking out, return back to their lower centers. How do you navigate these experiences in order to integrate them back into your life afterwards?
So I don't think we see things how they are. I think we see things how we are. I think reality is a memory, and we fill in reality based on our memory of some past experience. If you keep experiencing your partner, and you've been married for 40 years, more than likely you don't see them, you see the memory of them, right? So we fill in reality based on our memories, and every object, every person, everything, and every place that's known to us in our life is reflected kind of neurologically in the brain. So our experience of everything in three-dimensional reality becomes kind of known, right? So that makes total sense. So if you have a transcendental experience and you interact with frequency and energy that exists beyond the senses, and your interaction with that energy begins to cause the brain chemistry to become altered for you to peek through the other 99.99% of reality that you can experience with your senses, your interaction with that information then through an experience, a very lucid, very clear, very mystical experience, is going to cause the circuits in your brain to become rewired in some way from that experience that you didn't get from three-dimensional reality. And the feeling that's associated with it would be no feeling that you ever had before, because it's a new experience, and experience produces feelings. So you're not going to have the same feeling because it's a new experience. You're going to have a new feeling. So the new feeling tends to be more of an awakening. It tends to be more electrical. It tends to be more orderly. So the body and brain are having it immersed in the present moment and rewiring its circuitry, and it's changing the biology. So in that moment, when you come back to your senses, back to your identity, all of a sudden you start looking out the lens, and the memory of reality and the way you have seen it up to that point is changed. Some hypnosis, some conditioning, some programming, some veil of ignorance is removed, and we tend to see things closer to how they really are. Now, that experience, of course, has to be integrated into our biology. Like, we've got to be able to live our lives still, you know? And we have a language specialist that works for us, University of Central Oklahoma. He's the leading expert on the language of transformation. When we study this process where people have that moment of connection, right, where they're connected to information and energy and that arousal takes place, it tends to be very somatic. The person says, oh, I felt it like an engine switched on in my heart, or like every single atom in my body was vibrating to energy. They'll say my body was filled with light. Very somatic.
You have to use metaphors at that point.
Yeah, you have to use metaphors too, because metaphors are known, right? And then it's also very emotional. Like the person says, oh my God, like I've never felt love like that. I mean, I've never felt anything like that in my life. And so they have to use metaphors because there's nothing known that you can describe. So our language specialist had a transcendental moment during an event, and he could not find the language to describe what the heck happened to him. The only way he could describe it was using things that he thought and this is everybody does this, that you could relate to, that you had an experience based on your known self that he also had, like someone plugged me into a light socket, like the top of my head blew off, right? So you're using all these metaphors.
You said my fingers felt like sausages.
Yeah, my fingers. So you're trying to describe it, but it's not it, right? They're just trying to explain their experience, right? And so it's inevitable in many ways. So when you have it, it's healthy, because it takes you a while for you to get this whole new neural circuitry connected to this neural circuitry of the known identity that's been functioning in three-dimensional reality. The autobiographical self, the known, has got to kind of make new connections to the unknown, and that's a process, right? You got to go, what the hell happened? Oh my God, you keep remembering, you keep reviewing it, you keep thinking about it, you're firing and wiring, and now you're making all these connections. So when you come back to life, you're like, oh my God, I'm not seeing it that way any longer. I see it kind of a different way. And a lot of people that have near-death experiences have this kind of same thing that happens. Seems like the brain has tracked the whole thing neurologically. Happens a few times, we should be able to integrate it into our lives. If it starts happening too much, then it's very difficult to function in your life, right? And the purpose of this work is to be able to function in your life and to create the things you want in your life. So if it's too much, a person can get out of balance and kind of be lost between worlds, is the best way I could say it. And this is about functioning in your life. So 1 foot grounded in this three-dimensional world, the real world, 1 foot grounded in the quantum world. So straddle both worlds and, continue the experiment to see if there's more to reality that meets the eye. And every experience that we have should fundamentally change the way we perceive reality. And reality is 11/10 perception. So I'm certain that we're missing out on a lot of reality.
You call this the plane of demonstration. What exactly do you think or feel we are here to demonstrate?
Probably the divine within us. That would be the ultimate demonstration, right? To be realized that we are divine. That would be a great demonstration. And the way we get there is mastering greater levels of love. That means a part of us must die, right? Anything that's not love in us must die. In order for us to find love, a part of us must die. So there's not a lot of agreement for that in the world, but the demonstration of the divine, those masters that you're fascinated by, that I was fascinated by, could heal in a look, in a touch. They were connected. They could manifest things in a very short amount of time. They could appear in different places. They could put their body in altered states for an extended period of time. I think that's a greater demonstration of what it is to be a divine and awakened human, occupying a physical body, but in light of the truth, in light of information.
We opened this conversation talking about the future of the jobs and the youth that are stepping in. And really to begin, tying a knot on this beautiful conversation, the youth right now, they're facing, a lot of different information, a lot of different opportunities, options. And you talk a lot about the neuroscience of culture and how do we build a new culture in our society, because the current generation, the young generations, are going to be the leaders of the future. What would you recommend for someone young to begin to start connecting the nodes with other youth leaders and creating culture together?
Yes, so first of all, I just have to say that in all of my life, I think probably now is the most challenging time to be a young person. Without a doubt, there's so much information, there's so much distractions, there's so much discord and insanity kind of going on around the world. It's hard for them to feel really safe or really feel like they can follow anything in particular. So, but culture, well, first of all, we all share the same brain. And because we share the same brain as a human being, structure and function are highly related. We smile when we're happy, we frown when we're sad, we hold a stick the same way with opposing thumbs, we sleep at night, we're up during the day. So there's a universality that we have as a species, as humans, that we all share in common. So we're very similar in a lot of ways. Get down to instead of the gross anatomy, get down to the minute anatomy, and you look at the circuitry that takes place in an individual. That is really a reflection then of their individuality, right? And that would be the difference between your hand, the brain, and your fingerprint, the circuitry in your brain. So you have your own individual fingerprint, you have your own individual circuitry. So in a very just kind of generalized way, there's something that bridges the universality that we have in our brain and also the individuality that we have, and that is culture. And cultures are created by environments. Certainly, the culture who's living in the Amazon is very different than the culture that's living in northern Mongolia. It's a different environment, different culture, different traditions, different things that the culture has figured out that allowed them to live and sustain themselves in that environment. So there's beliefs, there's traditions, there's food, there's music. That's what kept the culture connected. That's what kept them together. So cultures are defined by environments, and one of the biggest things that makes up environment are people. Mm-hmm. So if you're a community, a collective community coming together, and everybody in the community then is of a certain belief, a certain practice, a certain tradition, a certain behavior, a certain understanding, a certain level of consciousness, then you have a new culture emerging, right? And it seems like the best way to change a culture is not fix the one that's already broken, but to create a new culture in some way where everybody goes, well, this looks like it's working a lot better than that. Now, that's the challenge in a world where there's a lot of self-interest. It's a challenge when we're living in a world where there's constantly support for separation and division and living in survival. It's a challenge to do that when in survival, the tribe is that everybody's selfish. Everybody's trying to take care of themselves because there's not enough of something or not enough resources or there's danger, right? So the fracturing of cultures are so easy to do. And if you want to fracture a culture, the best way to change their behaviors and their choices is to control their emotions. And if you can control their emotions and get them really absorbed in whatever it is that's creating that emotional charge, they can become highly disorganized and disintegrated, just like the brain. There are houses divided against themselves. And while that all is going on, there's a de-evolution taking place in some level in the culture of itself, right? So build a culture that's based on principles, built on values, built on certain beliefs. Have those people understand that the individual represents the whole, that there's honor, there's nobility, there's strength, there's enlightenment, there's empowerment, there's creation. The tribe is not responding, reacting like everybody else in the other tribes. They're overcoming, that process. That cultural emergence that takes place somehow becomes an invitation for more flamingos to drop in and to join that culture. They'll say, I don't like that one anymore. I want to go to this one. And hopefully that there's enough, people around the world that are making a difference in that way culturally, where we come together, not based on separation or, country or race or whatever. Or we come together, in this emergent kind of culture where every single individual gets to be an individual, but take on the divine aspects of the individual so that more and more people join the tribe, in some way. So the neuroscience of culture, then, the bridge between our individuality and our universality is culture. And I think when cultures are typically changed, when someone comes along and has a vision of the future, and no one else may be able to see that vision but the charismatic leader, I don't care who it is, whether good or bad, the charismatic leader standing up for justice, standing up for righteousness, standing up for honor, whatever it is, for change, is seeing a vision that nobody else is seeing. And his or her job is to inspire people emotionally, to come out of their resting state to see that vision. They can't see it when they're feeling desperate, when they're suffering. They can't see that vision. A charismatic leader's got to work that culture up into a state where individuals all can see that future. So much so they start to behave as if that future is happening. That's what charismatic leaders do. They behave as if that future is already happening, and other people start to behave that way. And all of a sudden you have this dramatic change in culture. So now cultures are typically created from the traditions of the past. Now you're creating a new culture by marrying a clear intention collectively, combined with an elevated state of energy and an elevated state of emotion, and it's collective networks of behaviors and people that determine reality. And so then you collectively get the behaviors together, you collectively get the intentions together, and all of a sudden you hopefully see the life that we live in, the reality that we live in, the world we live in, change in some really healthy ways.
Yeah, and you've also said that it's not the amount of people, but the coherence of the signal. So really that change doesn't require a mass amount of millions of people, but really people that are tuned into that vision of the future coming together and really creating change. And I'm curious to know, when you look out into the future, what do you see for humanity?
Wow, I have to stay away from a lot of different stimulants, in terms of information, because there's so many things that could cause us to not believe in that future. But God, a future where we resolve all of the problems, financial, wars, separation, whatever it is that's dividing people. I see a world where somehow all of that is resolved. There's prosperity, there's an abundance for all. We cooperate, we get along, we support each other, we invent things. We don't rely on things to think for us. We think and create for ourselves. We learn how to heal better. We learn more about sharing and abundance and all of those wonderful things that causes a species to thrive. We explore, space and everything else that goes along with it. Mm-hmm. So if people are healing other people in our work, and we have great evidence to prove that, both in person and remotely, the next question is, if you're doing it with your eyes closed in a group, can you get so good that you can do it with your eyes open whenever you want? That would be a great cultural demonstration for other people to want to behave in that way, right? And so then what is the effect of that? Well, that changes the old models pretty quickly.
Dr. Joe, we end every show with a segment called The Final Trio. But before that, where would you send people to connect more with your work, to be able to put all of these things that we've been talking about into practice, into their daily lives, and any other upcoming things that you would like to mention for us?
Yeah, so I really believe that information is the forerunner to experience. Knowledge is the precursor to an experience. So I don't really, invite people to jump in and do meditations. I think it's really good to learn. And when you understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, the how becomes very instrumental. You assign meaning to the act, right? Nothing left to doubt or conjecture or superstition. You can put an intention behind whatever you're doing, and the brain wants an outcome. So learn the information. The books are all available on drjoedispenza.com or on Amazon. Or there's a formula that's kind of a 13, 12-week course with 5 meditations and 30 minutes of explanation in each one of those small little mini lectures. We have progressive workshops that we do around the world. There's an online progressive that people can do. There's a lot of information in those progressive workshops. But where the real magic happens is a week-long retreat. It's just where you fully understand the entire thing to a much greater degree. And so the week-long events are really where the magic happens. I invite people to come to week-long events if they're interested in that. But start with knowledge, and then there's meditations that you can do. There's a morning and evening meditations that are really good meditations to start with for people that are just new to this work. But there's tons of resources online.
And other than becoming supernatural, if you were to do your 20s all over again, is there any books that you would leave for someone young that wants to inquire into that knowledge?
Did we talk about books the last time?
No.
Gosh, there's so many great books. I love stories, so The Red Lion is one of my favorite books. The Nine Faces of Christ is an amazing book. The Brother of the Third Degree is a fabulous book. I love any books that have to do with theoretical quantum physics. Goswami is a great author. Fred Alan Wolfe is a great author. Benthoff is a great author. The Wonderful Life of Henry Sugar is a great, simple little book that you can read your kids even, that they would find value in. Before the Big Bang is a fabulous book on quantum physics. I love Bruce Lipton. He's a brother of mine. Biology of Belief is a classic book. Those are good starts for people.
Beautiful. For the final trio, Dr. Joe, the first two questions are personalized to the guest, and the final we ask at the end of every show. And we didn't do this the first time.
Because I don't remember them.
The first one is, when was the last big time that the unknown did not let you down?
I think doing the work we're doing with Navy SEALs right now, I was uncertain whether I thought it would be a good choice to get involved in government agencies and bureaucracies and things like that. And I decided that it would be a great thing for us to do, and it worked really well. It's worked. We've changed a lot of people's lives. It took a lot of energy. It took a lot of organization, but I thought it would be a noble gesture. And so stepping out and doing that and stepping into the unknown and seeing the effects that it's created in a lot of people's lives has been really valuable. We just did a retreat just a few weeks ago with a bunch of veterans, and hearing the stories of transformation for these men and women was mind-blowing for me. So that's a great reward for trusting in the unknown.
Yeah, trusting your heart as well to go where this work needs to go, and ending up in prisons, ending up in now Navy SEALs, athletes, wherever. Like, this work is universal. So it's beautiful to see that you're taking it where it needs to go. The second question is, you always say, if you would have asked me 2 to 5 years ago, the answer would be different because the constant evolution of science. What would be one thing that if I asked you in about 5 years would be different than today?
If you ask me a question 5 years from now?
Yeah. That you think with the evolution of science, your answer now would have to be different in 5 years.
Wow, that's a great question. If we're on the trajectory that we're currently on with the research that we're currently doing, I think the advanced meditators in their blood has the secrets for most diseases. All diseases, I will even say, if I were to say 5-6 years from now.
Enough said. The last question we ask at the end of every single podcast, and we call it the time capsule question, because it requires us to, again, travel out a little bit into the future. But I chose out the years in around 10 to 15 years down the line. I chose out those dates because I believe that is going to be a time when the current youth of today are going to be stepping more into leadership positions around the world. And they're going to need mentoring, they're going to need guidance, they're going to need advice, tools, knowledge. And you had the opportunity to leave behind a time capsule for these leaders. And you can include anything that you wanted in this time capsule. It doesn't have to be physical. It could be a frequency and energy. It could be anything that you could think of. doesn't have to necessarily fit in a physical time capsule, but leaving it behind so that these leaders will open it 15 years down the line, and they'll be guided with the tools that you left behind to be able to lead into what we're calling the new earth in this space.
I want you to know that there was a time capsule on my ranch that
Really?
was filled with books
No way.
and wine.
That you left?
Yeah, and back when there were CDs and DVDs, literature. It was made in the shape of an egg, and it was gold leaf. It's gold leafed, and it was a message. What kind of just telling the story of anybody who finds it about human beings. But I would certainly encourage the human species to behave very differently than how we're behaving, and hopefully foster some type of hope in them that a species that belongs to the earth, in some way should resonate in the principles of nature, and that we can always invent answers to problems that are in front of us, and to work, in some way with each other, and to work with nature, and really to educate people in the right way about their potential, and really to think beyond the stars.
Beautiful. And I just wanted to say that thank you for teaching me how to open my heart to be able to say these words, but I truly appreciate and honor your presence, your love for humanity, what you're doing in the world. It is a big scale what you're moving, and you're dropping a big stone in the quantum field for my generation to the future generations to learn what is next and what we really are. So again, it's always been a journey to be here with you. I love weaving together, and I know I will continue to be immersing myself in the work and just learning everything that I can about myself and about other people around me. So
no, thank you. No, thanks for doing the work, and thanks for being a light amongst our youth community, and yeah, well, you are the future.
Thank you, brother.
You're welcome.
Much love.
Cut.
Cut.
All right.
How do we do?